Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unwiring Minds. This is Raquel Paz-Bergia, your host, and today we have Dr. Ravi Iyer with us. He is a physician, author, scientist, and so much more, and he's here to talk to us about the importance of understanding what neurodiversity is, what it is, how it works, and why is it that we need to be a more neuro-inclusive society where we can have a mix of neurotypical and neurodiverse people in our workforce, in our workplace, and the way that it actually is a collaborative environment that supports both in a growth manner. So I'm very excited to have you here today. So I'll let you get right to it.
Hi, Raquel. Thank you for having me over. The concept of neurodiversity is something that strikes very close to me because I have ADHD. I grew up in India. Nobody knew what ADHD was. My parents did not know. They just thought I was distracted and playful, not focusing on my studies. I was 58 years old before I actually got diagnosed with ADHD. A psychiatrist colleague of mine made the diagnosis, and he proved it to me. He did the screening test, but all my life I struggled with that, and I thought there was something that I wasn't good enough compared to other people. But I had this drive, and I kept pushing to work through it. So literally, I had these two 10-pound weights on my ankles, but so I just worked harder to fly with them. And the idea of neurodiversity is a new word. A lot of people are coining it. They're talking about it. People are beginning to talk about the world as neurotypicals and neurodiverse. They are not two tribes. They are actually the same thing, because the brain has so many modes of functioning that the only difference between a neurotypical and a neurodiverse person is a percentage game. The majority of the world, the brain is wired and has a neurochemical functioning that falls into a recognizable pattern, which constitutes the majority of the population. And then you have a smaller segment of the population whose brain functions slightly differently, that
Right.
they perceive things differently. But if you look at the world and all the accomplishments, almost all the accomplishments that you have, the really major breakthroughs, were all created by neurodiverse people. Picasso was neurodiverse. His paintings could not be considered created by a neurotypical person. Salvador Dali, Van Gogh, Mozart, Bach, Beethoven, these are all neurodiverse people. Einstein was neurodiverse. So if you eliminated neurodiversity out of the population, if you keep talking about neurodiverse people as disorders, as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, as autism spectrum disorder, if you talk about it as bipolar disorder, then automatically you are starting your entire process from one of as if there's a defect that has to be fixed, eliminated, or segregated, versus no, this is not a disorder, but it is a unique persona, a unique manifestation of neuronal functioning. This is the essence of what I want to have a dialogue about neurodiversity. There was nothing wrong with me. I was made a unique way that was different than my brother or my other people in my family, which actually led to all the things that happened in my life in its unique way, which could never have been done. I'm a physician, a scientist, a published author with patents and inventions spanning human and veterinary fields, none of that could be done by someone who would have been wired to function in a very predictable way.
Right.
So the very unpredictableness of my thought process leads to its constant creativity, the ferment that allows me to create and produce. So, but when you talk about how do we include neurodiverse people into our workforce, you have to understand something. The workforce of tomorrow, the next century, even the rest of this century, is going to keep moving away from physical to mental. Manufacturing is no longer going to be done by human beings, maybe for another 10 years or 20 years, but very, very soon, probably within my own lifetime, and definitely within your lifetime, there will be machines manufacturing for you. You will already, right now, you have automotive plants where robots go and assemble entire cars, and your assembly line is all a robotic assembly line. So you don't need, you need only one or two people to manage the machines from a very peripheral aspect. So more and more, you're going to need people whose mental capacity is going to be used for creating this world of tomorrow. And that mental capacity is bound to come from neurodiverse people. It is because they see the world differently. They see color differently. They see light differently. They see objects differently. They see opportunities differently. There's even crises when they come. Neurodiverse people approach a crisis completely different from neurotypical persons. All right. So and you need that different attitude in your everyday workforce. So how do you create a workforce that marries neurotypical people and neurodiverse people? We were chatting just before we started this, and I said that the world of tomorrow, the future, is given birth to by neurodiverse people, but
Right.
it is raised, it is nurtured, raised, and erected by neurotypical people. So you need both. You need the neurodiverse people to give birth to the new world. Then the neurotypical people who have superior executive abilities. That's the hallmark of neurotypical people. They can execute. They can execute excellently. Neurodiverse people are not very great at execution. They are very great at creation.
Right.
Execution is hard for neurodiverse people. Neurotypical people have a hard time creating. They can take something and make a product out of it. They can make a marketing campaign out of it. And they can understand how to create that, how to disseminate a message to 1 million people. But you ask a neurotypical person to create the message, they can't create it.
Right. That's true. Very, very true.
So in a marketing department, you need that neurodiverse copywriter to write the copy. You need that neurodiverse architect or the artist to create the image. And then you need the neurotypical editor who can take that and say, okay, this is how we are going to disseminate it. So in my workforce, in my own clinic, I am neurodiverse. My staff are neurotypical. And they, over the years, we have been working together now for over 20 years, they have understood how I function.
Right.
So they will come to me and say, Doc, I need to refocus you. I need to this one. Or they will talk to each other and say, no, he's doing something important now. Let's not interrupt him. Let's manage it this way. They understand the variations of my mind. And
Right.
they allow me to be as creative as possible when I'm taking care of patients. So sometimes I'll get a difficult patient. So this kind of synthesis between neurodiverse and neurotypical people cannot be created out of a textbook. You cannot have a single flow chart to create that.
Right.
You need a, a period of trial and error and collaborative work.
Absolutely. And that's also bringing up a question for me, because I can tell you that there's people listening right now that are in our audience that are neurodiverse, and they might be wondering like what their first steps can be to be involved in a more inclusive environment for both that sort of balance between the neurotypical and the neurodiverse. So what would you recommend for someone that might be young, they might be challenged by the fact that they're neurodiverse and they don't know how to approach the workforce as someone that has these unique abilities that a neurotypical person does not have?
So the one thing that neurodiverse people have difficulty is controlling their own creativity.
Right.
So because being a neurodiverse person, your brain is like as if it's constantly bubbling, it's constantly fermenting, shooting out ideas, because you see opportunity. A neurodiverse person is a high sensitivity person. They are sensitive to their environment in a way that does not have any filters. So what happens is they get stimulation all the time. And one of the biggest challenges of a neurodiverse person is how do you filter it such that some amount of control is aware? Otherwise, you just spin out of control.
Yeah.
So I don't care how creative you are, but if you're going to constantly spaz out, no one is going to have the patience to suffer through those spastic moments and wait for you to disseminate your great, wonderful idea.
Exactly.
So the first thing for a neurodiverse person, especially a young neurodiverse person, is to start doing mindful awareness exercises. Go to a controlled environment where the first step is first control your space, control your inputs, control the sensory inputs. Turn off your phone, don't wear an Apple Watch, all right? Control, and then direct your attention to something that you have control over. When I started, I did a mindful awareness where I would watch the breath. I would not try to control my breath. I would just sit in one corner and away from other people, and I would just watch the way the breath flows in and the way it flows out. And I would do an exercise where I would watch the breath, and I try to visually, my awareness, I would like it to ride my breath to see how deep into my chest can I follow my breath. And then when the breath flows out, I would like to see how far outside my body can my breath flow out, and can I be aware of how far outside it is going. And in this way, I would do this, I would swing on this emotional, mental swing of swaying with my breath. And in this oscillation, there was peace. There was a space of calm and control. Initially, as I did this, I found my ability to control the barrage of stimulation naturally increased. And once that happened, I could then control which thoughts I wanted to give power to, which thoughts I could ignore. And in this form, I had control. Being neurodiverse is being born with a horse that can run the Triple Crown, and you want to be able to control that animal that you are born with.
Yes, exactly.
Otherwise you get thrown off. So my advice to any young neurodiverse is first, establish breath control and mindful awareness. Then with that, you have Because you're born with an engine, with a phenomenally powerful engine. And you just need to know how to control that engine, otherwise it's going to tear your car apart.
Right. Absolutely. No, I could not agree more. And so thank you so much for joining me today on here and sharing all of this with our audience, because I feel like there's so much out there that we're not aware of, particularly because so many people don't tell us about the fact that as a neurodiverse person, there's certain abilities that are phenomenal. Like you said, they're amazing. We need to make sure we're using them in the right ways with the right techniques. Like you said, working on ourselves through these conscious acts, whether it's conscious breath work and other situations that, like you said, in a controlled environment can help significantly. And from there, there's so many processes that we can incorporate with and mix with a neurotypical person. And when combined,
Yeah.
you're making an amazing, incredible like bomb of amazing challenge innovations and new things that are coming. Like you said, it's the future. So thank you so much for coming on here today and sharing all of this with our audience, because there's so much to learn from you. And I believe that today we got a snippet of it. And I encourage everybody to go read the doctor's books, everything. We've got so many things to learn from you. And I encourage everybody to dive into Dr. Ravi's story, company, everything he does, because there's so much to do there. So thank you again for your time and for coming on here with me. And to the listeners, I will see you next time.
Thank you.
So my recording, I ended my recording. I think